The colony's ship New Harvest broke through the atmosphere of Kepler 442b on a gray morning. Inside the ship, 300 humans watched the viewscreens with tired eyes. They had traveled for 18 months in cold sleep, and now they were awake and ready to start their new lives. Captain Maria Santos stood at the front of the observation deck. She was a short woman with dark hair and strong hands. She had been a farmer on Earth before she joined the Colonial Corps. Now, she led these people to a world that the Galactic Council had marked with a black warning symbol. "All right, everyone," she said, "welcome to our new home." The planet below them was covered in thick purple vegetation. The oceans were dark green, almost black in some places. Mountains rose up like broken teeth against the sky. Lightning flashed in the distance, and the wind sensors showed speeds that would knock a grown man off his feet. A young man named Thomas Park raised his hand. He was fresh out of agricultural school, with bright eyes and too much energy. "Captain, I've been reading the Galactic Council's report on this planet. They classified it as a Class 7 Deathworld." Maria nodded. "That's correct." "A Class 7, Thomas repeated. "That means the native life is highly aggressive. The atmosphere has trace toxins. The weather patterns are extreme. The Council says no intelligent species should attempt colonization." "Also correct," Maria said. Thomas looked confused. "Then why are we here?" Maria smiled. It was the same smile her grandmother used to give when someone asked why she planted tomatoes in rocky soil. "Because we're human, Thomas, and humans don't read warning labels." The ship landed in a wide valley between two mountain ranges. The ground shook when the landing struts touched down. Outside, the wind howled like a hungry animal. The first thing the colonists noticed was the smell. It came through the air filters within minutes. It was a heavy, wet smell, like rotting vegetation and metal mixed together. Dr. Lisa Chen, the colony's biologist, checked her instruments. "Atmospheric analysis complete. Oxygen levels are good. Nitrogen is a bit high. There are trace amounts of sulfur compounds and some unknown organic particles. Nothing immediately lethal, but I recommend masks for the first few weeks until we know more." Maria nodded. "Standard procedure. Everyone gets a mask. Now let's get to work." The cargo bay doors opened, and the colonists stepped onto their new world. The purple grass came up to their knees. It was thick and tough, with edges that could cut through thin fabric. The trees in the distance were massive, with trunks as wide as houses and branches that spread out like dark umbrellas. Within an hour, the colonists had set up a basic perimeter. They used portable fence posts that generated a low-level electric field. It wasn't much, but it would keep out most animals while they built something stronger. Thomas was assigned to the soil analysis team. He knelt in the purple grass and pushed a sensor probe into the ground. The readings came back almost immediately, and his eyes went wide. "Captain Santos," he called out, "you need to see this." Maria walked over, her boots crushing the tough grass with each step. "What is it?" "The soil," Thomas said. "It's incredibly rich, high in nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. There are trace minerals I've never seen before. This dirt is better than anything we had on Earth." Maria looked at the purple landscape around them. "Good soil means good farms. That's why we picked this planet." "But the Galactic Council said the native life would make farming impossible," Thomas said. "They said the local organisms would destroy any crops we tried to grow." "The Galactic Council," Maria said slowly, "has never met a human farmer." That night the colonists ate their first meal on the new world. They sat around portable heaters, eating ration packs and drinking recycled water. The wind had died down, and the sky above them was filled with unfamiliar stars. An older woman named Helen Okonkwo sat next to Maria. Helen had gray hair and deep wrinkles around her eyes. She had been farming for 50 years, starting on her family's land in Nigeria before joining the colony program. "I've seen worse," Helen said. looking at the dark forest in the distance. Maria laughed. Have you really? My grandmother's farm was on the edge of the Sahara, Helen said. Every year the desert tried to take more land. Every year we fought it back. We built walls from stones. We planted trees to hold the soil. We dug wells so deep that the water was ice cold. She took a bite of her ration pack. This planet has water, good soil, and plenty of sunlight. The rest is just details. The next morning, the colonists discovered the first challenge. A creature had broken through the electric fence during the night. It was still there when they woke up, standing in the middle of their camp like it owned the place. The creature was about the size of a large dog, but it looked nothing like any dog from Earth. It had 6 legs covered in hard scales. Its head was flat and wide, with 4 eyes that glowed faintly in the morning light. Its mouth was full of teeth that looked designed for crushing bone. Thomas froze when he saw it. Several colonists reached for weapons, but Helen just walked toward the creature, her hands empty and open. "Helen, wait," Maria called out. Helen ignored her. She stopped about 5 meters from the creature and stood there watching it. The creature watched her back. Neither of them moved. "It's curious," Helen said finally. "It's not hunting, it's just looking." The creature made a sound, something between a growl and a chirp. Then it turned and walked away, pushing through the electric fence like it wasn't even there. Within seconds, it had disappeared into the purple grass. Thomas let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. What was that? "That," Helen said, "was a neighbor. We'll be seeing more of them." She was right. Over the next few days, more creatures came to investigate the human camp. Some were small, like insects with too many wings. Some were large, like the 6-legged predators that watched from the edge of the forest. None of them attacked, but none of them seemed afraid either. Dr. Chen spent hours documenting each new species. "This is amazing," she said during one of the evening meetings. "The biodiversity here is incredible. I've counted over 200 distinct species just in this valley, and I've barely started." "Are any of them dangerous?" a colonist asked. "All of them are dangerous," Dr. Chen said. "That's what makes this a death world. Every organism here has evolved to survive in harsh conditions. They're tough, aggressive, and highly adaptable." She paused. "But that doesn't mean we can't live alongside them. We just need to be careful." Maria stood up. "Tomorrow we start clearing land for the first farm. We'll work in teams, always with armed guards nearby. We move slowly, we stay alert, and we don't take unnecessary risks." Thomas raised his hand again. "Captain, the Galactic Council's report mentioned something about the plants here. They said the native vegetation releases toxic chemicals when damaged. It's a defense mechanism." Maria nodded. "I read that part. Dr. Chen, what's your assessment?" Lisa thought for a moment. "The chemicals are irritants, not poisons. They cause skin rashes and respiratory discomfort. Long-term exposure might be problematic, but with proper protective gear, we should be fine." "And if the gear fails?" Thomas asked. Helen answered before Maria could. "Then we adapt. That's what farmers do. We face problems, we find solutions, and we keep going. A little toxic grass isn't going to stop us." The other colonists nodded. They were tired and nervous, but they were also determined. They had come too far to give up now. Maria looked at her people and felt a surge of pride. These were not soldiers or adventurers. They were farmers, engineers, teachers, and doctors. They were ordinary people who had chosen to do something extraordinary. "Get some sleep," she said. "Tomorrow we plant our first seeds." The first farm plot was a disaster. The colonists spent 3 days clearing a hectare of purple grass. They wore full protective suits, and even then, several people developed rashes from the chemical spray the plants released. The grass was tough, with roots that went deep into the rich soil. Cutting it down was hard work, but pulling out the roots was even harder. When they finally had a clear patch of ground, they planted earth wheat. It was a hardy variety, bred for colony worlds, designed to grow in difficult conditions. The colonists watered it carefully and set up a small greenhouse dome to protect the seedlings from the harsh wind. 2 days later, the wheat was dead. Thomas stared at the brown, withered plants with disbelief. "I don't understand. The soil analysis was perfect. The water is clean. The temperature is within acceptable range." Dr. Chen was already taking samples. "Something in the soil," she said. "Some organism or chemical that's killing the plants." They found the cause a few hours later. It was a microscopic fungus, native to the planet, that attacked the roots of any plant it didn't recognize. The fungus was everywhere. It lived in the soil, in the water, in the air. It was one of the reasons the native plants were so successful. They had evolved alongside the fungus, developing immunity to its effects. Earth plants had no such protection. "We could try fungicides," Thomas suggested. "Kill the fungus before it kills the crops." "No," Maria said firmly. "We're not going to poison the soil on our first week here. There has to be another way." Helen was examining some of the native plants at the edge of the cleared area. She had pulled one up by the roots and was studying it carefully. "These plants survive," she said. "They have thick roots, almost like armor. The fungus can't get through." "But we can't eat native plants," Thomas said. "We don't even know if they're safe for humans." "We're not going to eat them," Helen said. "We're going to learn from them." Over the next few weeks, Helen led a team of botanists and farmers in a project she called Reading the Land. They studied the native plants, documenting how they grew, how they defended themselves, and how they interacted with the local ecosystem. They took soil samples from different areas, testing to see which ones had the most fungus and which ones had the least. What they found was surprising. The fungus wasn't a single organism. It was a complex system, a web of different species that worked together to break down dead plants and recycle nutrients back into the soil. It was actually beneficial, making the soil richer and more productive. The problem was that Earth plants weren't part of the system. The fungus treated them as dead matter and broke them down. "We need to introduce our plants to the system," Helen said during a meeting. "Make them part of the local ecology instead of fighting against it." "How do we do that?" Maria asked. Helen smiled. "The same way farmers have always done it, we graft." Grafting was an old technique, used on Earth for thousands of years. You took a cutting from one plant and attached it to the roots of another. The two plants would grow together, sharing nutrients and characteristics. Helen's idea was to graft Earth crops onto native root systems. It took months of experimentation. Most grafts failed. The Earth plants and native plants were too different, their biology too incompatible. But Helen kept trying, adjusting her technique, selecting different species of native plants to use as rootstock. Finally, she succeeded. A tomato plant grafted onto the roots of a native vegetable survived the fungal attack. It grew slowly at first, then faster. Within a few weeks, it was producing fruit. The tomatoes were small and slightly purple from the native rootstock. They tasted different from Earth tomatoes, with a hint of something metallic and strange. But they were edible. They were nutritious. And most importantly, they proved that farming on this world was possible. Maria held one of the small purple tomatoes in her hand. "Helen, you're a genius." Helen shrugged. "I'm just a farmer. This is what we do." By the end of the first year, the colony had 3 functioning farms. The grafting technique had been refined and shared. Colonists were growing wheat, corn, beans, and vegetables, all grafted onto native rootstock. The crops looked strange, with purple-tinged leaves and unusual growth patterns, but they produced food. The colonists had also built proper houses. They used a combination of materials from their ship and resources gathered from the local environment. The houses were sturdy, designed to withstand the strong winds and occasional storms that swept through the valley. The native wildlife had mostly left them alone. There were occasional incidents. A pack of 6-legged predators killed some of the colony's chickens. A flying creature with razor-sharp wings attacked a farmer who got too close to its nest. But these were individual events, not coordinated attacks. The animals were dangerous, but they weren't trying to wipe out the colony. Dr. Chen had a theory about this. The animals here are used to competition, she explained. They evolved in an environment where everything is trying to kill everything else. They don't see us as a threat because we're just another competitor. As long as we don't push them too hard, they'll tolerate our presence. This turned out to be mostly true. The colonists learned to identify the most dangerous species and avoid their territories. They built their farms in open areas where large predators rarely hunted. They planted crops that the local herbivores didn't like, reducing the chance of raids on their fields. Life was hard, but it was good. The colonists worked long hours, ate simple meals, and slept deeply at night. They celebrated small victories, a successful harvest, a new baby born, a house completed. Thomas Park became one of the colony's best farmers. He had lost his nervous energy, replaced by a calm confidence that came from experience. He still asked questions, but now he usually knew the answers before he asked. One evening, he sat with Captain Santos on the porch of her house. They watched the sun set behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "It's beautiful," Thomas said. Maria nodded. "It is." "When I first read the Galactic Council's report," Thomas said, "I thought we were making a mistake. I thought this planet would kill us all." "And now?" Thomas smiled. "Now I think the Galactic Council doesn't understand humans." Maria laughed. "No, they don't, and I hope they never do." The Galactic Council learned about the human colony on Kepler 442b during the second year of settlement. A survey ship, passing through the system on its way to somewhere else, detected the colony's radio signals and stopped to investigate. The ship belonged to the Velani, a species of tall, thin beings with blue skin and large eyes. They were known throughout the galaxy as careful and methodical people. They made excellent scientists, bureaucrats, and administrators. They did not make good colonists. The Velani captain, whose name was Coordinator Thurn, looked at the sensor data with disbelief. There were humans living on a Class 7 Deathworld, not just surviving, thriving. The sensors showed farms, houses, and hundreds of life signs. "This is impossible," Thurn said to his second officer. "The Galactic Survey classified this world as uninhabitable." "The Galactic Survey has never been wrong before," the second officer agreed. "Contact them," Thurn ordered. "I need to understand what is happening here." The first communication between the Velani ship and the human colony was awkward. The universal translators worked, but there were still cultural gaps that made understanding difficult. "Greetings," Thurn said, his image appearing on the colony's main screen. "I am Coordinator Thurn of the Galactic Survey ship Careful Analysis. I am here to investigate your settlement." Maria Santos stood in front of the screen, wearing her work clothes, which were stained with dirt and plant juices. "Welcome to New Harvest, Coordinator. How can I help you?" Thurn's large eyes blinked several times. "You are the leader of this colony." "I'm the captain, yes." "And you have established a permanent settlement on this world." "That's correct." "But this world is classified as a Class 7 Deathworld," Thurn said. "The native life is highly aggressive. The environmental conditions are extreme. Colonization should be impossible." Maria shrugged. "It's been challenging, but we're managing." Thurn was silent for a long moment. "May I visit your settlement? I would like to see how you have accomplished this." Maria looked at the other colonists in the room. They nodded. "Sure," she said. "Come on down, but I should warn you, you'll need to wear protective gear. The local plants spray chemicals when you touch them." Thurn's eyes went even wider. "The plants attack you." "They don't attack," Maria said. "They defend. There's a difference." Coordinator Thurn's visit to the human colony lasted 3 days. During that time, he walked through the farms, visited the houses, and talked with dozens of colonists. He was accompanied at all times by a human guide, usually Thomas Park, who had volunteered for the job. The Villani was confused by almost everything he saw. "You grow food in the ground?" he asked, looking at a field of wheat. "That's how plants work," Thomas said. "But the soil here is full of hostile organisms. Our surveys showed multiple species of aggressive fungi and bacteria." "We adapted," Thomas said. "We graft our crops onto native rootstock. The native plants have natural defenses against the local organisms." Thurn recorded this information carefully. "Fascinating. And the large predators, how do you defend against them?" "Mostly we avoid them. We know where they live and hunt, and we stay out of those areas. When we can't avoid them, we use weapons." "You fight the predators?" "Only when we have to. Usually they leave us alone." Thurn's confusion deepened. "This does not align with our data. The predators on this world should attack any foreign species on sight. They are highly territorial and extremely aggressive." Thomas thought about this. "Well, we are pretty aggressive too. Maybe they respect that." On the second day of his visit, Thurn asked to see the colony's most dangerous area. Thomas took him to the edge of the dark forest, where the massive trees blocked out most of the sunlight. "We don't go in there," Thomas said. "Too many predators and the terrain is too difficult. Plus, we don't need to. We have enough farmland in the valley." Thurn looked at the forest with his large eyes. Something was moving in the shadows, watching them. He could see multiple sets of glowing eyes. "You live next to this?" he asked, his voice higher than normal. "It's not so bad," Thomas said. "They're just curious. They won't attack unless we give them a reason." At that moment, one of the six-legged predators stepped out of the forest. It was larger than the one that had visited the camp during the first week. Its scales were darker and its teeth were longer. It stood about 20 meters away, watching them. Thurn froze. His species had evolved on a peaceful world, without large predators. Every instinct in his body told him to run. Thomas didn't run. He stood his ground and looked at the predator calmly. "Hey there," he said. "Just passing through, we don't want any trouble." The predator made a low, rumbling sound. Then it turned and walked back into the forest. Thurn's legs were shaking. How did you do that?" "Do what?" "Communicate with it, make it leave." Thomas shrugged. "I didn't really do anything. I just showed it I wasn't afraid. Predators here are smart. They don't waste energy on prey that might fight back." Thurn needed several minutes to calm down. When he could speak again, he asked the question that had been bothering him since he arrived. Why would you choose to live here? There are hundreds of worlds in this sector that are safer, more hospitable. Why would humans deliberately choose a death world?" Thomas looked out at the purple valley, the strange crops, the unfamiliar sky. "Because it's ours," he said. "We found it, we claimed it, and we made it work. No one else wanted it. No one else could have done what we did. This world is hard, but it's home." On the third day, Thurn had his final meeting with Captain Santos. They sat in her office, a small room in the colony's main building. The walls were covered with maps, charts, and photographs of the colony's progress. "I have completed my investigation," Thurn said. "I will be submitting a report to the Galactic Council." "What will the report say?" Maria asked. Thurn was silent for a moment. "It will say that humans have successfully colonized a Class 7 death world. It will document your methods of agriculture, your interactions with the native wildlife, and your general approach to survival." He paused. "It will also include my personal observations." "Which are?" Thurn's large eyes focused on Maria's face. "Humans are the most terrifying species I have ever encountered." Maria laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." "It is meant as one," Thurn said seriously. "You understand, the Galactic Council has been observing spacefaring civilizations for over 100,000 years. In all that time, No intelligent species has ever successfully colonized a death world. Not one. Many have tried. All have failed. Then I guess we're the first, Maria said. You are, Thurn agreed. And that raises questions about humanity, about what you are capable of. Maria leaned back in her chair. Coordinator, let me tell you something about humans. We come from a death world ourselves. Earth is full of predators, parasites, and natural disasters. We evolved fighting for survival every day. When we spread to the stars, we didn't become soft. We just found new challenges. But the challenges here are extreme, Thurn said, even by Deathworld standards. Yes, Maria agreed. And we'll face more challenges in the future, bigger ones, harder ones, and we'll adapt to those too, because that's what humans do. We adapt, we survive, we thrive. Thurn stood up, his thin body unfolding from the human-sized chair. I believe you, Captain Santos, and I think the Galactic Council will believe you too. They may not understand you, but they will believe you. He walked to the door, then turned back. One more question. When you landed here, when you saw the predators and the toxic plants and the hostile environment, what did you think? Maria smiled. I thought it was Tuesday. Thurn blinked. I do not understand. It was a Tuesday, Maria said. When we landed, just another Tuesday, just another day of work. The Vellani coordinator left the next morning. His ship rose into the sky and disappeared among the stars. The colonists watched it go, then went back to work. There were fields to tend, animals to feed, and houses to build. Thomas found Helen in one of the greenhouses, checking on a batch of new grafts. The aliens seem impressed, he said. Helen looked up from her work. Are they? Terrified mostly, but impressed too. Helen went back to her plants. Good, maybe they'll leave us alone now. Do you think they will? Helen shrugged. Doesn't matter either way, we have work to do. Thomas nodded and picked up a watering can. She was right. Whatever the Galactic Council thought, whatever the rest of the galaxy decided, the colonists of New Harvest would keep doing what they had always done. They would work the land. They would face challenges. They would adapt and survive. It was what humans did, and they did it well. 5 years passed on Kepler 442b. The colony of New Harvest grew from 300 people to over 1,000. New colonists arrived on transport ships, drawn by stories of the strange world where humans had done the impossible. They came from Earth, from Mars, from the asteroid colonies. They came with skills and dreams and the willingness to work hard. The original settlement had become a proper town. There were streets and shops and a school. There was a hospital staffed by trained doctors and a research center where scientists studied the local biology. There was even a small restaurant that served food made entirely from crops grown on the planet. The farms had expanded too. The grafting technique that Helen had developed was now standard practice. Colonists grew dozens of different crops, each one adapted to the local conditions. The food they produced was enough to feed the colony with plenty left over. They had started exporting to other human settlements. Captain Maria Santos had been re-elected as colony leader 3 times. She was older now, with more gray in her hair, but she was still strong. She still spent time in the fields, helping with the harvest, getting her hands dirty. She said it helped her think. Thomas Park had become the colony's head agriculturalist. He ran the research program that developed new crop varieties. He trained new farmers. He wrote manuals and guides that were sent to other human colonies on other difficult worlds. His work had helped humans settle 3 more death worlds across the galaxy. Helen Okonkwo had passed away peacefully 2 years after the colony was founded. She had died in her sleep, surrounded by the plants she loved. The colonists built a memorial garden in her honor, filled with the strange, beautiful crops she had helped create. Her grafting technique was called the Okonkwo method, and it was taught in agricultural schools across human space. The Galactic Council had watched the human expansion with growing concern. Their report on new harvest had been read by representatives from every major species. The reactions varied. Some were fascinated, some were skeptical, most were afraid. The Velani, who had first discovered the colony, became the unofficial experts on human behavior. Coordinator Thurn had retired from active service and now worked as a consultant. He gave lectures to alien audiences, trying to explain the strange species that thrived on worlds that should have killed them. Humans do not think the way other species think, he would say. They do not see danger the same way. They do not calculate risk the same way. They look at a world that would destroy any other civilization, and they see opportunity. Are they insane? Audiences would ask. Perhaps, Thurn would answer. Or perhaps they are simply built differently. They evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them. Death is not a stranger to humans. It is an old enemy, an enemy they have learned to fight. The crisis came in the 6th year. A plague swept through the colony's crops. It was a new disease, something that had never been seen before. It attacked the grafted plants at the junction between Earth crops and native rootstock. Within weeks, half the farms were infected. Within a month, the colony's food production had dropped by 70%. Dr. Chen, now the head of the research center, worked day and night trying to find a solution. She analyzed samples, tested treatments, and consulted with experts on other worlds. Nothing worked. The disease was too new, too different from anything they had encountered before. "We're running out of time," she told Maria during an emergency meeting. "If we can't stop this plague, we'll lose all our crops within 2 months. The colony will starve." Maria looked at the tired faces around the table. Thomas was there, looking older and more worn than his years. The heads of the different farm sections were there, along with the colony's doctors and administrators. They were all waiting for her to say something. "What are our options?" she asked. "We could request emergency food supplies from Earth," Thomas said. "The transport ships could reach us in about 6 weeks." "That would help with the immediate crisis," Dr. Chen said, "but it doesn't solve the underlying problem. The disease is still spreading. Even if we get food from Earth, we'll just be delaying the inevitable." "What about developing a resistant crop variety?" Maria asked. Thomas shook his head. "It would take months, maybe years, to develop and test a new variety. We don't have that kind of time." The room was silent. Outside, the wind was blowing hard, making the windows rattle. It was the same wind that had greeted them when they first landed, all those years ago. Maria thought about Helen Okonkwo. She thought about what the old woman would say in this situation. She thought about the advice Helen had given her on that first night, sitting around the portable heaters under an unfamiliar sky. "We adapt," Maria said quietly. "What?" Thomas asked. Maria stood up. "That's what we do. That's what we've always done. We don't give up. We don't wait for someone else to save us. We adapt." She walked to the window and looked out at the purple fields. Many of them were brown now, dying from the plague. But some were still green. Some were still healthy. "Why are some fields still healthy?" she asked. Dr. Chen checked her notes. "The disease hasn't reached them yet. They're isolated from the main farm areas." "No," Maria said. "That's not what I mean. Look at the pattern. The healthy fields aren't random. They're concentrated in certain areas." Thomas came to stand beside her. He looked at the landscape, seeing it with farmer's eyes. "You're right," he said slowly. "The healthy fields are mostly near the river and near the edge of the forest." "Why would that matter?" Dr. Chen asked. Maria turned to face her. "That's what we need to find out. Get your team to those areas. Take samples from everything. The soil, the water, the plants, even the air. Find out what's different." It took 3 weeks of intensive research to find the answer. It came from an unexpected source: the predators. Dr. Chen's team discovered that the areas near the forest had higher concentrations of a particular chemical compound in the soil. The compound came from the waste products of the six-legged predators that lived in the forest. The predators ate the native animals, processed them through their unusual digestive systems, and deposited the remains near their territory boundaries. This waste contained natural antifungal compounds. The native plants had evolved to take advantage of these compounds, using them to protect against diseases. The grafted crops, connected to native rootstock, could absorb the compounds too. Fields near predator territories were protected. Fields far from predator territories were vulnerable. "So the predators have been helping us this whole time?" Thomas asked, amazed. "Not intentionally," Dr. Chen said. "It's just part of the natural ecosystem. The predators help the plants, and the plants help the herbivores which feed the predators. It's a cycle." Maria understood immediately. "We need to bring the predators closer to our farms." Everyone stared at her. "Captain," Thomas said carefully, "these are the same predators that have killed 3 colonists over the past 6 years. They're dangerous." "I know," Maria said, "but they're also the key to our survival. We need to find a way to coexist with them, not avoid them, coexist." It was a crazy idea. It went against every instinct, every safety protocol, every piece of common sense. But it was also the only option they had. Over the next few months, the colonists of New Harvest did something no other species in the galaxy had ever attempted. They deliberately attracted predators to their farmland. They started by studying the predators more closely. They learned their habits, their territories, their social structures. They discovered that the six-legged creatures were intelligent, more intelligent than anyone had realized. They communicated with each other using a complex system of sounds and chemical signals. They had family units and hierarchies. They even had what might be called culture. The colonists began leaving food at the edges of their fields. Not much, just enough to interest the predators without making them dependent. They built shelters where the predators could rest during the hottest part of the day. They stopped hunting them entirely. Slowly, carefully, the predators began to accept the human presence. They still didn't like the colonists exactly, but they tolerated them. They started patrolling near the farms, leaving their waste in places that helped the crops grow. It wasn't a partnership. It was something stranger and more complicated. An arrangement, a truce. 2 dangerous species living side by side, each benefiting from the other's presence. The plague ended within 6 months. The protected crops produced enough food to feed the colony while new fields were established. The crisis was over. News of what the humans had done spread throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Council, which had already been nervous about human expansion, became even more concerned. A species that could ally with Deathworld predators was a species that could do anything. Coordinator Thurn, now very old by Velani standards, gave one final lecture before his retirement. The audience was packed with representatives from dozens of species, all wanting to understand the humans. "I have studied humans for many years," Thurn said. "I have lived among them, observed them, tried to understand them, and I have come to a conclusion." He paused, his large eyes scanning the crowd. "Humans are not like other species. They do not colonize worlds. They do not simply survive in hostile environments. They do something different, something that no other civilization has ever done. They make the hostile environments part of themselves. They take the danger, the difficulty, the death, and they transform it. They do not conquer Deathworlds. They become part of them. And that," Thurn said, "is why they are the most successful colonizers in galactic history. They do not fight against nature. They adapt to it. They embrace it. They become one with it." After the lecture, a young Velani approached Thurn. "Coordinator, do you think the humans are dangerous?" Thurn was quiet for a long moment. "Yes," he said finally. "They are the most dangerous species I have ever encountered, but not in the way you might think." "What do you mean?" "They are dangerous because they cannot be stopped. Not by predators, Not by plagues, not by deathworlds. They face every challenge and find a way forward. They never give up. They never surrender. They just keep adapting, keep surviving, keep growing. Is that bad? Thurn's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. That depends on whether you are their friend or their enemy. For their friends, humans are the greatest allies imaginable. They will protect you, help you, stand beside you against any threat. And for their enemies? For their enemies, Thurn said, humans are the end of the world. 10 years after the first landing, Captain Maria Santos stood on a hilltop overlooking New Harvest. The town had grown into a city. Thousands of humans lived there now, with more arriving every month. The farms stretched to the horizon, a patchwork of green and purple under the alien sky. Thomas Park stood beside her. He was middle-aged now, with gray in his hair and laugh lines around his eyes. He had a family, a daughter who was learning to farm, a son who wanted to be a pilot. "We did it," Thomas said. Maria nodded. "We did. When I first landed here, I thought this planet would kill us all. I thought we were making the biggest mistake in human history. And now," Thomas smiled, "now I think this is the greatest thing humans have ever done." Below them, the six-legged predators moved through the fields. They had become a familiar sight, almost like oversized guard dogs. The colonists had named them. They knew individual animals by their markings and personalities. It wasn't friendship, not exactly, but it was something close. The wind picked up, carrying the strange smell of the alien world. It didn't bother Maria anymore. It smelled like home. "Do you remember what you said when that Vellani coordinator asked why we chose this planet?" Thomas asked. Maria laughed. "I told him it was Tuesday." "He didn't understand." "No," Maria agreed. "He didn't, but that's okay. He doesn't need to understand. He just needs to accept that this is who we are." A transport ship appeared in the sky, carrying another load of colonists. They would be scared at first, confused by the alien landscape, overwhelmed by the challenges ahead. But they would adapt. They would learn. They would become part of New Harvest, part of the strange, wonderful community that humans had built on a world that should have killed them. Maria watched the ship descend. She thought about all the other Deathworlds out there, waiting to be claimed. She thought about all the challenges that still lay ahead, all the problems that still needed to be solved. And she smiled. It was just another day, another Tuesday, another opportunity to show the galaxy what humans could do. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in colors that existed nowhere else in the universe. The predators were settling down for the night, their rumbling calls echoing across the valley. The crops swayed in the wind, healthy and strong. Maria Santos, farmer, captain, and pioneer, looked at the world she had helped build and felt at peace. "Come on," she said to Thomas. "Let's go welcome the new arrivals. They've got a lot to learn." They walked down the hill together, toward the city and the future, leaving footprints in the purple grass. Behind them, the stars began to appear, one by one in the darkening sky. And somewhere in the galaxy, in the halls of the Galactic Council, alien species looked at the reports from human colonies and wondered what would come next. They wondered what new impossible thing humans would accomplish. They wondered if there was any world, any challenge, any obstacle that could stop the strange, stubborn, unstoppable species from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. The answer, of course, was no. There wasn't. There never would be. Because when humans landed on Deathworlds, they called it Tuesday and started farming. And when Tuesday was over, Wednesday came, and Thursday, and Friday. And humans kept going. Always adapting. Always surviving. Always forward. That was just what humans did.